Hello, everyone. I'm Will Gunn, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the American Bar Association's National Law Day Chair for 2021. I want to welcome you to this 2021 Law Day launch program. Even though Law Day is still nearly 2 months away, we're hosting this program now to launch a national conversation of our theme, Advancing the Rule of Law Now, which you'll be hearing more about shortly. Due to the importance and timeliness of this theme, we wanted to provide plenty of time for people around the country to consider how they might engage in programs, activities, and discussions surrounding the theme. I'm a former Air Force lawyer, and several months after September 11th, 2001, I was assigned to an office in the Pentagon, in the wedge directly next to where a jet had crashed into the building on September 11th. Each day, as I walked the corridors of the building, I would ponder the words on a plaque. The words were those that were spoken by President George W. Bush on the night of September 11th. The plaque said, "Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America." I believed then, and I still believe today, that the rule of law is the foundation of America. And the extent to which people and institutions adhere to the rule of law makes us stronger or possibly weaker as a nation. In 1957, the ABA established May 1st as Law Day, a national day set aside to celebrate the rule of law. On May 1st, 1958, President Dwight David Eisenhower proclaimed Law Day to honor the role of law in the creation of the United States. And in 1961, Congress passed a joint resolution establishing May 1st as Law Day. Now, for more than 60 years, the ABA has announced a theme and has led a national discussion of how law influences life in America. This year is certainly no exception, and over the next 2 months, we will be participating in Law Day activities. We encourage everyone, individuals, groups, organizations, to participate safely during this ongoing pandemic. In a moment, I will introduce ABA President Trish Rifo to discuss the theme. She will be followed by Alberto Mora, the director of the ABA's Rule of Law Initiative, to talk about what the theme means to him. We'll then have presentations to discuss and highlight programming opportunities. Finally, there will be time for questions, so please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens if you want to submit questions. To get things started, I have the pleasure of introducing ABA President Trish Rifo to formally announce and to talk about the ABA theme. Trish is the president of the ABA, the world's largest voluntary association of legal professionals. She is a partner in the Phoenix, Arizona law firm of Snell and Wilmer. She has served as chair of the ABA's policymaking arm, the House of Delegates. She has also served as the chair of the ABA's largest practice group, the Section of Litigation, and as chair of the ABA Standing Committee on Membership. She has served in a number of other roles as well, but what I really want to do is give you a chance to hear from the ABA's president, Trish Rifo. Trish?
Well, thank you, Will, and hello, everyone, and welcome to today's launch event. It's just wonderful that so many of you have logged on to this Law Day kickoff event, and I'm really excited that this is the first time we've ever offered such a program. We appreciate everything that all of you are doing to promote widespread awareness of and pride in our system of justice and the rule of law. So one of the things that you get to do as the privilege of serving as president of the American Bar Association is you get the honor of selecting the National Law Day chair. And it's, I hope, pretty obvious what a great choice I made in selecting Will Gunn. You couldn't find a wiser and more inspiring leader than Will. And Will, I want to start in front of everyone by thanking you for not just your service as Law Day chair this year, but for everything you've done in your career to advance the work of the legal profession and to promote access to justice for all under the rule of law. So ABA presidents also have the privilege of working with their Law Day chair to select the year's Law Day theme. And Will and I, as well as a number of our senior staff and some others, went round and round to try and come up with the best theme to address the circumstances of this year. And I am pleased that for 2021, our theme is advancing the rule of law now. The rule of law provides a bedrock of consistency and fairness in our society during times of peace and times of war, during periods of calm and periods of crisis, during times of social order and times of civil unrest. And yes, during times of safe public gatherings and times of mask wearing and social distancing. So now is always the time to advance the rule of law. Free societies rely on the rule of law to protect and expand rights, to advance justice for all, and to enact positive change to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Our Law Day theme explores the enduring meaning of the rule of law, yet it is primarily designed to remind all of us of our role as individuals, as we, the people, day in and day out, to uphold and advocate for the foundation on which our great republic rests. So thank you, everyone, for being here to learn more about what you can do in the next 2 months to participate in Law Day 2021. The American Bar Association appreciates your hard work and the leadership in your communities to promote civic awareness through Law Day this year and every year. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Trish. I really appreciate your joining us today, and I appreciate just the opportunity to serve as Law Day chair. I'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker for this event. And that keynote speaker is Alberto J. Mora. Alberto serves as the Associate Executive Director for Global Programs for the American Bar Association. And in this capacity, he directs the ABA's Global Rule of Law Initiative, overseeing the ABA's Human Rights Center, and coordinates the ABA's relationship with the United Nations and specialized agencies and functions. He's been a legal professional for nearly 40 years. And over that time, he's served in a wide variety of roles. He has served as the general counsel for Walmart International, as well as of Mars Incorporated, the world's third largest food company. He has been a lawyer in private practice, and he served in various roles in government, including as the general counsel for the Department of the Navy. And in fact, that's where I met Alberto nearly 20 years ago. And at that particular time, as I mentioned, I had an opportunity to walk the corridors of the Pentagon every day. What I didn't mention is that my role at that particular time was that of being selected to serve as the first ever Chief Defense Counsel for detainees at Guantanamo Bay. And it was a hectic time for me, a time requiring a lot of thought and introspection. And one of the thoughts that I had was, how does my function fit in to our nation and to our safeguarding the rule of law? And it was good to know that there were people like Alberto around. Rather than going further with respect to that, I'd like you to hear from him. Alberto?
Thank you, Will. It is it's a kind introduction, and it's an honor for you to have invited me to participate in this Law Day celebration. It is an honor to be present with all of you here and to be in the company of our president, Trish Rifo, whom I am privileged to serve as her director of the ABA's global program. It is very much an honor to also to be in Will's company. As Will indicated, we first met almost 20 years ago when I was serving as general counsel to the Department of the Navy. And Will was a career Air Force Judge Advocate General who had some of the toughest assignments in the military, including the astonishingly tough assignment to serve as first Chief Defense Counsel for the Office of Military Commissions. He handled that job with distinction. An amicus brief written by his team contributed to the seminal Rasool versus Bush Supreme Court decision, which vested the right to file civil actions in U.S. courts to the Guantanamo detainees. He did this even though this put him in an adverse position to his military superiors in the Pentagon. Will was picked for these jobs, needless to say, because he was regarded as one of the most capable, gifted, and respected lawyers in the military. He may no longer be wearing the uniform, but all of us who know Will still regard him with exactly that same respect today. So thank you, Will, again for inviting me here today. The theme of our celebration is advancing the rule of law now. By selecting this theme, President Rifo, as she indicated, hopes to inspire national and international conversation to examine how the rule of law is a sustaining force in times of conflict, unrest, and uncertainty. Her goal is also to highlight the shared responsibility that we all have to promote the rule of law, defend liberty, and pursue justice. I support Trish's objectives and share these beliefs. Law is a sustaining force in these turbulent times, and particularly in these turbulent times. All of us, particularly those who are lawyers, do have a responsibility to promote the rule of law, to defend liberty, and to pursue justice. And this is what the ABA does at home and abroad every single day. This is why I'm proud to be a member of the ABA and to work for it. This is why I'm proud to lead the ABA's Rule of Law Initiative, or ROLI, which over the past 30 years has helped strengthen the rule of law by implementing more than 3,000 grants in over 100 countries. Along with the work done by our colleagues at the ABA Center for Human Rights, the ABA Section of International Law, and many other ABA sections and committees, the work of ROLI has benefited millions of lives around the world by defending human dignity, buttressing the rule of law, and advancing human rights. This work will not only continue, but will accelerate in the years to come. And the need for this effort is there. Freedom House, the noted research and advocacy institute, reported in their Freedom of the World 2020 survey that 2019 was the 14th year of consecutive decline in global freedom, with 64 countries experiencing deterioration in their political rights and civil liberties. Similarly, the authoritative World Justice Project, our sibling organization, reported in their WJP Rule of Law Index 2020 that, quote, more countries declined than improved in overall rule of law performance for a third year in a row, continuing a negative slide towards weakening and stagnating rule of law around the world. Of concern, this slide included the United States, which dropped out of the WJP's list of top 20 rule of law countries for the first time. As this data shows, the trends point to continuing deterioration. Thus, the need for the legal community to support the rule of law, both at home and abroad, has never been greater in recent history. Our celebration of Rule of Law Day is simultaneously also an urgent call to action. The rule of law is a vast and complex topic. The nucleus of the concept is the requirement that all governmental authority, including the highest state officials, and all persons be impartially subject to the dictates of the law. But this is only the so-called thin definition of the term. In the United States, the customary reference is to the thick definition of the concept, which is operationally much broader than that, no pun intended. It includes, for example, procedural and substantive considerations and integrates issues of separation of powers, democracy legitimacy, the independence of the judiciary and bar, just laws, legal transparency, and robust enforcement, to name just some of the principal elements. And the concept is made even more complex when the multinational dimension is taken into account and the international law overlay is added to how national legal systems operate. Because of the breadth of the topic, and because I only have a few minutes, I will focus my remark on a few narrow areas of the rule of law. I will focus primarily on the United States. I will touch on the need for the public to continue to have confidence in the law and our legal system. I will touch on the relationship between law and cruelty, and I will touch on the importance of our nation's example to the health of the rule of law abroad. But let me make an important caveat, which will be familiar to almost everybody in the audience. Because the authority to speak for the ABA is the exclusive province of the ABA president, my remarks reflect only my personal views and do not reflect the views of the ABA or any entity of the ABA. I speak only in my personal capacity. Let me start with a family anecdote that touches on the law and my family's relationship with the law. My mother, who was born in 1925 and turned 96 last month, was born in Hungary. Her father, my grandfather, was a lawyer. He became quite a prominent lawyer in Hungary's second largest city and worked both in private practice and public service, including as city prosecutor. One of my mother's earliest memories took place when she was 4 or 5, thus around 1929 or 1930. And this is how she tells the story now. She was close to the front door when the doorbell rang, and she opened the door. Standing in the doorway was a woman, a poor woman by the look of her, holding a large tree branch loaded with gleaming pink cherry blossoms. At that moment, my grandfather came to the door, and the woman asked if she could give the flowers to my mother as a gift. Grandfather agreed, and my astonished mother found herself standing in the doorway holding the flower tree branch as the woman stroked her hair. Here's the rest of the story. The woman had been my grandfather's client. She had been the frequent victim of her husband's beatings at a time and in a country when the husband's brutality towards his wife, particularly in rural areas, was customarily treated as a legal right. She had killed her husband with a knife in self-defense of one such beating and was indicted for murder. My grandfather had represented her pro bono and secured her acquittal, and this in an era when a guilty verdict was closer to the expected result. She had come to the house to express her gratitude, but was penniless and could not afford a fee or anything else for that matter. On the way to the house, she had seen a cherry tree, and rather than come empty-handed, she ripped off the branch and tendered that as a gift to the lawyer who had secured her justice for her. It was all she could give, and for my grandfather, it was more than enough. For my mother, this event, which lasted only a few minutes, provided a set of experiences and lessons that have stayed with her for all her life. Had her mother known that that client, a wife who had killed her husband, was coming to visit, she probably would have been scandalized and would not have allowed her daughter to meet her. But my daughter did meet her, and it felt right to her. And then there were the lessons that my mother learned from the encounter about her father, his values, and the kind of person he was, about the law and legal profession at its best, about the brutality and the damage it can inflict, about the nature of justice and mercy, about the human dignity inherent in everyone, about gratitude expressed in the purest of ways, and a lesson even about the shocking expressive power of beauty, in this case conveyed by the flowers. All of this was captured and returned by her in an instant and shared with me more than 60 years later. Why tell this story? It is to remind ourselves why we are lawyers. It is to remind ourselves of the function and power of law and its relationship to human dignity. It is to put a human face on the abstraction we call the rule of law at its most basic level and why it matters. And it is to remind ourselves that the yearning for justice is universal and that the power of the rule of law to answer that yearning is also universal. Perhaps the most memorable moment I've had as Rowley director was a dinner I had in Hanoi with a very distinguished Vietnamese lawyer and scholar who had trained in the Soviet Union and served as chief law clerk to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Vietnam during the Vietnam War, one of his many accomplishments. When I asked him over dinner what the most consequential moment of his career was, he responded that it was the year he spent reviewing the 100th death penalty appeals received by the court that year. Most were murder cases. What the appellate outcome should be in the majority of them is clear cut, but in some cases, the just outcomes were not so clear. The brutality documented in the files had stayed with him, but what troubled him still more than 30 years later were the questions: had he analyzed the facts correctly? Had he given the right advice? Was justice done? What was the role of mercy? Today, just as in Vietnam many decades ago, there are lawyers all over the world, including places like Russia, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries where the rule of law is tattered and human rights are observed only sporadically, who believe in justice and are working even at great risk to advance the rule of law. Governments may extinguish freedom, as John F. Kennedy so often remarked, but they can't extinguish the universal desire for freedom. Let me now turn my attention home to our United States and make some brief remarks about some unfinished business we have here. It involves cruelty and the rule of law. American history has many glorious chapters, but some terrible ones too. The latter is illustrated by the history of slavery and the scars to our national character that its still unresolved legacy of racism has bequeathed to us. Still, our nation is powered by a redemptive bedrock belief in human dignity, rights, and equality that defines our national ethos. And one of our saving graces is our confidence that while we are not perfect, we are perfectible. I believe, as did Barack Obama, amplifying the words of Theodore Parker and Martin Luther King, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. There may be dips and wrong turns along the way, but the trajectory of our history is clear. President Obama's use of the code has been criticized because it implies inevitability. And that caution is well placed. As the events of January 6th demonstrate, there is nothing inevitable about the maintenance of the rule of law, or for that matter, the ultimate full extension of the civil rights guaranteed by our Constitution, but not yet fully enjoyed by all our citizens. This will require further effort and constant vigilance. And we should recognize that we are fully capable as well of backsliding, of hollowing out fundamental rights believed to have long ago been secured. One such example of such backsliding is our use of torture as a weapon of war following the terrorist attacks of 9/11. This is an issue that Will is very familiar with. Before 9/11, there could not have been any serious debate about the use of torture because there were not two sides to debate. The nation had categorically rejected the use of torture as a matter of national values, constitutional doctrine, statutory law, international law and treaty, and military practice. In our two existential conflicts, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, our two iconic wartime leaders, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, personally barred the use of torture. Washington, because he would not countenance the Continental Army emulating the notorious brutality of British forces, and Lincoln through the adoption of the Lieber Code, which became the foundation for the Geneva Conventions. It is difficult to overstate the importance of the prohibition against torture to our values and our laws. The noted legal philosopher Jeremy Waldron has written this: the rule against torture is archetypal of a certain policy having to do with the relation between law and force, and with law's forcefulness with regard to the persons it rules. The prohibition on torture is expressive of an important underlying policy of the law, which we might try to capture in the following way. Law is not brutal in its operation. Law is not savage. Law does not rule through abject fear and terror, or by breaking the will of those whom it confronts. The rule is vividly emblematic of our determination to sever the link between law and brutality, between law and terror, and between law and the enterprise of trying to break a person's will. After 9/11, all of this was washed away. The fear and fury felt by our nation and our leaders prompted the adoption and application of torture methods, including the euphemistically labeled enhanced interrogation techniques and extraordinary renditions. Originally limited to Guantanamo and a few interrogation black sites, the use of torture metastasized informally to many operational military units and influenced the behavior of foreign governments, militaries, and intelligence agencies. Once a defender of human rights, the United States recruited other governments to conduct brutal interrogations and to establish interrogation black sites in their own territory, often in violation of their own laws. And when some of these governments years later began to investigate the crimes of torture in their own countries, the United States refused to provide evidence or to otherwise cooperate. When we used torture, we neglected to heed the counsel of Albert Camus, who, writing about the Algerian War of Independence, observed that when countries fight, they should, quote, take care not to choose weapons that would destroy what we're trying to protect. When America goes to war, we do so to protect our country. That entails not only protecting lives, but defending our rights and freedoms. Torture, as Camus well understood, was a weapon that would destroy what we were trying to protect. The legal and strategic consequences of our use of torture were immense. When we waterboarded our first detainee, it was because we had necessarily taken a position that the right to be free from cruelty was not an inherent, inalienable right possessed by every person. Rather, we replaced that with the notion that every government, including ours, has the unfettered right to apply cruelty to others as a matter of state policy, subject to their sole discretion. By taking the right to be free from torture out of the basket of protected rights, our nation diminished the scope of human rights and assaulted the very fabric of constitutional rights and international law. We weakened our ability to defend ourselves against terrorism because we had created a legal fissure between ourselves and our allies, none of whom would alter their legal systems to accommodate the US desire to torture. In some cases, foreign militaries began to refuse to train with us, cooperate in the field with us, or to fight alongside the US military. Intelligence cooperation with us diminished. Public opposition to the United States increased around the world, along with the rise of anti-Americanism. Our enemies enjoyed a surge of public support that made itself felt in the battlefield. The US use of torture largely ended by the end of 2004, as details of the program began to leak out, the atrocities at Abu Ghraib exploded in the news, and the program's ineffectiveness and cost became apparent. In 2009, on his second day in office, President Obama formally terminated the program. However, he opted not to seek accountability for those responsible for the design and implementation of the program, a step that would have been painful, legally problematic, and almost certainly politically impossible. In December 2014, the Senate Intelligence Committee's release of a highly redacted version of its mammoth committee study of the Central Intelligence Agency's detention and interrogation program finally settled the debate as to whether the enhanced interrogation techniques and the conditions of confinement that some detainees were subject to were torture or something less. The conclusion, plain to see if not stated as such, was it was torture. Where does this leave us today? Is the American use of torture now something relegated to the history books, or does it consist of a continuing violation of our legal obligations? Does our past use of torture affect our ability to lead by example and strengthen the rule of law and human rights abroad today? My sense is that we have not yet sufficiently come to grips with the issue of torture, and that our failure to do so continues to harm our nation. Consider this. The black letter legal requirements imposed on the United States, both by domestic and international law with respect to torture, are to prohibit, investigate, prosecute, punish, and make restitution. With the possible exception of portions of the requirement to investigate, the settled consensus among the international community, academia, and the human rights community is that the United States has committed torture and has not sufficiently complied with any of these obligations. This is most clearly illustrated by the International Criminal Court's decision on March 5, 2020, to open a formal investigation into alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes committed by United States forces in Afghanistan and possibly initiate a prosecution. While I believe the ICC would be wrong to attempt to initiate a prosecution for the reason that it lacks jurisdiction, given that the United States is not a party to the Rome Statute, the ICC is not wrong to recognize that there is a prima facie evidence of war crimes and to seek those responsible to account. That is what it's designed to do. And it was designed that way largely because the United States sought to extend the rule of law globally by its contributions to the design and management of the Nuremberg trials, to the adoption of the Nuremberg principles, and to the very creation of the ICC. By failing to hold ourselves accountable for acts of torture, the United States has put ourselves in a terrible, untenable position that is at odds with our core values, the requirements of the rule of law, and our national interest. Our national purpose is to protect and expand liberty and human dignity. Our purpose abroad is similarly to help create a world that is increasingly protective of human dignity and increasingly free. Yet by our actions, we have corroded the laws and norms that categorically prohibit the use of torture and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, the linchpin of our and any humane legal system. These actions also suggest a degree of loss of confidence in law and the rule of law as a mechanism to secure a more just and freer world. By failing to hold ourselves accountable, we join company with all those regimes that would similarly claim to act with impunity and to hold themselves exempt from the requirements of international law. By attacking the ICC, flawed as it is, we damage an institution that remains our most effective legal counter against genocides and crimes against humanity. And by doing all of this, we damage the moral authority that we need to have if we wish to effectively continue to lead, as lead we must, in the fight for human rights and the rule of law. All of this is harmful to us. This is not what we want to be. This is not, as Senator John McCain often said, who we want to be. And it's certainly not where we want to go. Our country should stand forthrightly against brutality in all its forms, at home and abroad. All of us here have some unfinished business to attend to. Thank you again, Will, for the invitation, and thank you all for the attention.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I greatly appreciate it. We have a few questions, and I'd like to start it off with one. What advice or counsel would you have for a public servant who finds themselves in a position where they believe that their government is operating in a manner that's contrary to the rule of law and our stated core values as a nation?
Well, this is an issue which you faced directly, didn't you? We've both been in the same kind of situation. I first learned about the abuse of prisoners in Guantanamo through the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, which I oversaw. The director of the service took me aside after one meeting and said, look, we've heard rumors about detainee abuse in Guantanamo. Do you want to hear more? Now, in government, this is a very delicate way of testing whether you want to get involved in something as potentially controversial as this or not. My reflex was that as an attorney and as a Navy general counsel that I had to fly to any place where there was a suspicion of illegal activity or abuse. And I told them that I wanted to hear more. They came back with information that suggested that the authority had been provided to interrogators at Guantanamo to use brutality in the interrogation of prisoners. I kept looking and I found a memorandum that actually demonstrated that kind of authorization. For the rest of my time at the Pentagon, I think I worked almost every day to try to counter that what I believed was potentially unlawful activity and potentially disastrous activity as a matter of international policy and our ability to fight the war on terror effectively. From my earliest time in government, I realized that if I were to serve in government, I would have to be prepared to walk away from it if I could not live with my conscience and my duties in the course of the performance of my obligations in government. And that was the case in the case of interrogation. I felt I was in the right. I thought I was going to win the internal debate. And I was confident that ultimately logic and reason and the good faith of President of so many individuals in the military would prevail. I was only partially right in all of this, but I protected the Navy. I protected our country. I protected our laws and our system, and I would do it all over again.
One of our listeners, well, first of all, thanks very much for that response, because I believe that it's incredibly important that people think about that even before they're in such roles. But at one point you quoted from a report, and someone was asking what report was that you were quoting from?
This is the Senate Select Intelligence Committee's 2014 report, popularly called the torture report, but listed how I mentioned. This is the longest report in Senate history, and it was an examination of CIA management and practices at its black sites.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Also, one of the listeners was saying that they understand the rule of law, but can we get an explanation of the theme for Law Day? Now, from your perspective, as you hear this theme of advancing the rule of law now, what does it mean to you?
It means lots of things. Since I'm professionally involved in the rule of law almost every single day, and we've worked in over 100 countries and working today in more than 30 countries advancing the rule of law. But we need to, as Americans, we need to first and foremost look at home and make sure that we are living up to our ideals and standards in protecting and enhancing the rule of law in this country. And it is not a given. That's what it means to be concerned and involved in the rule of law now. The system is under assault. And I'll give you an example. After this last election, challenges to the election were considered by more than 60 courts, which unanimously found that there was no evidence to sustain allegations of voter fraud, systemic voter fraud. And yet many Americans don't believe that. Many Americans still continue to believe the fiction that systemic voter fraud existed. The fact that these Americans don't look to the courts and to our legal system for the definitive response to that question demonstrates that they lack confidence in our judiciary and our legal system to answer these troubled questions. That's troubling because our democracy depends on confidence in our law, lawyers, and legal systems and courts, because that's what the rule of law rests on. And the fact that there should be some erosion of confidence in the courts is a demonstration that we need to shore up our rule of law to retain our freedoms.
Thank you very much. And everyone, I just want to let you know that we will have time at the end of all of our presentations today for more questions. So please continue to put your questions in the Q&A block at the bottom of your screen. And we hope to get to all of them. If we don't get to them during this session, then we will be posting answers or responses on lawday.org. And Alberto, before you go, I just want to say again, thank you very much for your remarks today. And in my role when you were General Counsel of the Navy, and of course some of the things that you were doing, I didn't know about at the time. It was a very lonely experience that I had in the Pentagon in those days. But I want to thank you. And one of the things that inspired me during that time, I'm reminded of today, and as I was listening to you speak, and there were words spoken by Thomas Paine, a great patriot, and who said that he that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression. For if he violates this duty, he establishes a precedent that will reach to himself. And your conduct and your fight for us to hold true to our core values as a nation, they were important then, and they continue to be important now. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those words. And I would say exactly the same thing of you and the way you comported yourself at the Pentagon. And since then, thank you for what you did.
You're certainly welcome. All right. Well, folks, what we'd like to do is move on to the next section. And at this point, we're going to have some presentations to give you some ideas on what kinds of activities you as individuals, your groups, your organizations, what you can do in order to promote this theme of advancing the rule of law now. To get us started, I'd like to turn to Zoe Linza from St. Louis, the Bar Association of Metropolitan St. Louis. Zoe?
Thank you, Will. It's been my pleasure to have the opportunity to work with you and the committee. It's been a great opportunity, and I thank you for all the thoughts and all the activities that have gone in. Krista Hogan and I are going to talk a little bit about some things that can be done locally to promote the Law Day and rule of law. So thanks again. See if we can advance the slide. So we're going to talk about ABA Law Day 2021 and the rule of law. I'm sharing with you that at BAMSL, Law Day can be elevated to incorporate other functions, such as BAMSL also has their installation of officers at the start of the bar year, and we try to get well-known speakers. We have had a number of Supreme Court justices. Justice Clarence Thomas joined us, as did John Misham, which was a very interesting and informative program. Senator Alan Simpson joined us to talk a little bit about some Law Day activities, and we also have had Justice Samuel Alito. At BAMSL, we also incorporate our installation of officers. This is a picture of the passing of the gavel with our installation of officers. And if we happen to have a Supreme Court justice, he swears in the new president as well as members of the board at a luncheon. We also work on Law Day very closely with state and federal judiciary on Law Day. The immediate past chief of the Eastern District of Missouri District Court has said the judiciary must be dependent on bar associations to promote the rule of law and support the judiciary. If our judges are attacked, so many times they cannot comment, and it's our duty as bar associations to work with the judiciary. Also, you can collaborate with unique organizations in your area. We collaborate with the Judicial Learning Center, which is a learning center for students at the Thomas Eagleton Federal Courthouse. We have a long tradition with the Federal Courthouse, the Eighth Circuit, and the District Court in helping to share information not only with lawyers, but with students and members of the court. We have students that give presentations of their understanding about the theme, as well as we have students that participate in art contests, essay contests, which you can continue with the pandemic as it occurs. And then certificates are given to those individuals that are successful from around the area in these things. Finally, I would like to add that our foundation also each year has a Spirit of Justice. They give out Spirit of Justice awards, and these are for individuals who have implemented the rule of law. So not only lawyers, but perhaps a police officer or an EMT or a head of a nonprofit organization that has really shown how the rule of law in action works. And so that's another way to give out Spirit of Justice awards. At this point, I will turn it over to my co-Missouri Executive Director, Krista Hogan.
Hi, I am trying to get control of the remote. And it looks like it's working. So I'm Krista Hogan. Thanks a bunch, Zoe. It's good to see you. Zoe's up there in the northeast part of the state of Missouri, and I'm here in the southwest part in the Ozarks, and it's a beautiful sunny day. I'm the director of the Springfield Metropolitan Bar, and I have been in that position for 20 years now. For 10 years before that, I was a member of this bar and on the Law Day Committee. And 10 years before that, I was 18 and the 1981 first place essay contest winner of this very bar. I share this because 40 years later, I am still proud. And also to illustrate that Law Day can inspire and encourage the next generation of lawyers, activists, and it can do so much to encourage public engagement and interest in all that we do. So teachers out there, keep up the good work. I have just a couple of slides that I want to share with you. In a normal year, we have 2 Law Day events. We open our Law Day season around April 1st. And this slide's showing you some of those events. We start with this big standing room only award ceremony recognizing our essay and poster finalists. We have more than 300 entries in those contests, and we honor about 30 elementary middle school students. They show up with their parents, their teachers, their grandparents, their siblings, and lots of germs. That event is held at the public library and also marks the opening of an exhibit that we have there. We display all of the posters in the library concourse for a month. And that library concourse has foot traffic of more than 30,000 people during that time. Our closing event of Law Day season is a big, slightly fancy traditional Law Day lunch with speech and awards. So all this typically happens April 1st to May 1st. And as you might recall, April 1st to May 1st, 2020 is the month where nothing happened. So here's what we did do. So nothing. We did nothing, actually. For a few months, we did nothing. We tried to think of something that could be interesting or effective in the virtual format, and we just really weren't feeling it. So since the 2020 Law Day theme was constitutional, namely the 19th Amendment, we did this. On September 17th, this slide is showing you our Constitution Day rally on the courthouse steps. It was a very abbreviated version of sort of those 2 events. We had brief remarks and a presentation of our Liberty Bell Award and our poster awards. And the League of Women Voters was there to register voters. It was 15 minutes start to finish, and it was awesome. Also, here's a bonus. I reached out to a reporter at our newspaper and said we haven't had an election-related event, and she was nice but not non-committal. And then I said, there will be photogenic children. And those are apparently magic words because they ran a nearly full page spread, which you can kind of see in the background on the right side of the slide, with photos of our event. This was the smallest Law Day celebration ever, but because of that media coverage, it was the largest audience we have ever engaged. We followed up in October with a reading of the essay winners and an awards presentation in at the outdoor amphitheater at our art museum. Again, it was a small but really great event. And as I mentioned, we typically have the exhibit of our posters at the library. So in 2020, what we did was we had a condensed traveling exhibit. We started with this condensed exhibit at the courthouse rotunda in conjunction with our rally on Constitution Day. Then we moved it to the art museum for 2 weeks in conjunction with the essay readings. And then we finished with the full exhibit at the library for the entire month of November, which, if you think about it, is way better than April in 2020, because the art and the theme, your voice, your vote, our democracy, were perfectly chronologically aligned. And the icing on the cake is that the library is one of the largest voting precincts in our county. So those voters had something fun to look at while they were standing in line to vote. So having to get creative was forced, it was hard, and it was ultimately amazing. And going forward, we want to remember that. So our plans for this year are, our essay and poster contest events are underway. In terms of these events, we're planning to stick to our abbreviated and outdoor models for the time being and possibly forever. We're going to have a virtual poetry slam. And the new idea that we've come up with is a Law Day mail art campaign. Mail art has been around for decades, but it had a resurgence in 2020 because people wanted to stay connected, but from a safe distance. I have used up my time, so I'm going to put in the chat a link to our webpage about our mail art campaign. And feel free to steal the idea, or we would love it if you would want to share our campaign on your webpage. This is an all ages, everyone, everywhere campaign. All it takes is a 4x6 card and a stamp. And I can also send you a stack of postcards if you would like to distribute them in your community. I'll also put my email contacts. Love to hear from you, love to collaborate. Well, thank you so much for letting me share. I can't wait to see the creative and thought-provoking work that comes from Law Day 2021 and our collective efforts towards advancing the rule of law now.
Thanks, Krista. Our next presenter.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. My name is Tracy Satapani. I am the director of the Monmouth Bar Association. Each year, the Monmouth Bar Association and the Monmouth Vistage hold a creative contest for both Monmouth County public and parochial students in grades K through 12. This past year, the contest was converted to a remote format and entries were selected and submitted electronically. Attorneys, judges, and court staff scored entries remotely. Winning submissions and profiles of the winners were posted on a Law Day link on the NJ Court's website. Each year, this contest attracts hundreds of excellent student submissions. Judging is always a difficult process, but we got it done.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Heilman. I'm the ombudsman for Monmouth Vistage Superior Court, and I'm tasked with community outreach and servicing self-represented litigants. It appears our slides are scrolling through, so I'm going to let them do that. I'm going to discuss with you our annual symposium. Each year we hold a series of educational programs on the Law Day theme, and students are invited to attend. This is typically for grades 6 through 12, and educational presentations on the theme are given by legal scholars, historians, members of the bench and bar. In 2020, when we found we were working remotely, we did convert our symposium to a virtual format. What we were able to do was record a customized keynote address. It was hosted by our county clerk, Christine Hanlon, and it was on the fundamentals of voting rights here in Monmouth County and the voting processes in Monmouth County. Other scheduled video presentations were also converted to virtual format. What we offered were pre-recorded videos, lesson plans, and PowerPoint files through a website. And those modules were on women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment, voting rights, and electronic voting. Teachers, faculty, students, parents were all able to access that website remotely. And we found that many more people participated and engaged with online materials than would have been able to attend our symposium in person. And I do want to note that we did collaborate with outside agencies. So we are collaborating with outside institutions and agencies like historical societies for presenters as well. And that absolutely increases participation and attendance.
Another annual event is our formal court ceremony that we do. It's focused on the Law Day theme conducted by the Bar Association and the Monmouth Vicinage. Attorneys, judges, and court staff, elected officials, educators, students, and the community at large are invited to attend. A keynote address on the theme is presented, and we recognize student award winners for our creative and mock trial contest. This year, our ceremony was converted to a virtual format and modified. To shorten our virtual ceremony, the keynote address normally presented during the ceremony was presented during our virtual symposium. Our modified virtual Law Day ceremony recognized individual student award winners and allowed them to engage in personal dialogues with Judge Lisa Thornton, the assignment judge for Monmouth Vicinage. Creative award winners received a plaque and a prize by mail and were recognized in a press release. Prizes were sponsored by the IALTA Foundation and the NJSB Bar Foundation.
And finally, each year, the Bar Association and the Vicinage collaborate to offer classroom presentations on legal education topics and to support our mock trial teams. The Vicinage has a one judge, one school program, which allows partners to partner with schools to explore legal topics and learn more about the role of a judge and the justice system. In 2021, virtual classroom visits by judges and members of the bar on the Law Day theme became feasible and were offered to classes and student assemblies. And this could be the case again this year. If a live virtual presentation is not possible, you could give links to pre-recorded videos, lesson plans, and PowerPoints to teachers so that they're able to provide those materials to students for virtual curricula. And in this new virtual environment, students could also be offered the opportunity to engage in a virtual mock trial, virtual mock jury trial, or potentially to view a video of a real virtual civil jury trial if one's taken place. Members of the bench and bar could be paired with schools and offer feedback to virtual mock trial teams, or just to discuss the challenges of litigating and engaging in virtual jury trials. In closing, we wanted to let you know that all of our Law Day activities are developed with the support and leadership of our trial court administrator and assignment judge, and with full support of the bench and bar. And all of our activities are developed in close consultation with our county executive superintendent of schools. And they're promoted by the county superintendent of schools and also the director of non-public schools at the New Jersey Department of Education. And we're always very grateful to have extensive support among educators in our county and also administrators at the Department of Education. And we will be happily entertaining questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much for your time.
Judge Brown?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and Will and all the other presenters and all those that are on our call today. I'm delighted to be here. So I am a trial judge in Ellicott City, Maryland, and I am just delighted to be able to share some thoughts about working with the judiciary as you're planning your Law Day activities, especially when our theme today is so neatly tied with what we do, which is, making sure the rule of law is applicable, is out front and center. A couple of suggestions I'd like to offer include some of the following. Number one, go to the low-hanging fruit. You have been given, or if you go online, you'll be able to see the sample Law Day proclamation, A strong suggestion is if you can't reach the governor in your state, if you're a state bar that want to use that, go to the local, whether it's a county executive of a county or, a district, and get a local proclamation. One of the things that you are going to find is many school districts are still in that developmental part of getting students back into the classroom. So right now it's really difficult to kind of make connections with local educators. So my suggestion again is that you go local, is that you meet with members of your bar, you can meet with members of the bench and do sort of shorts and as far as your planning opportunities go, meaning that you could have a short activity such as if you only have a limited number of students, similar to what we're doing on this webinar, that's what you work with. You could contact your school system. Most schools now, even though they're working remotely, are giving a day. Typically it's a Wednesday, maybe it's other days in other jurisdictions where it's not a free day, but it's a day where students may not be actively engaged. So that may be the day that you can incorporate whatever you're going to do. Many jurisdictions are having some difficulty with deciding on what kind of platform they're going to use, the platform that they're using with their students and ones that they want to publish. So if you can work with a local or state bar association to use that platform to get the material out so that your call could be of a broader nature, I strongly recommend that. You could use your chief judge or, when you're meeting with members of the judiciary, and most local associations have some relationship with members of the bench, that you use whoever is available, that you say, this is what we are trying to do for this year, and work on doing that program. Now, even though we're in this virtual sphere, I can't imagine that there are few, if any, jurisdictions that have not been working remotely. I think we all are, and we're all trying to get back to being fully engaged, practicing social distancing and those things. So there still may be limited opportunities to use a courtroom setting for some things. And maybe there could be, the Zoom call could be in the courtroom with just a limited number of participants participating in either with the lawyers speaking to students or students being there to ask questions of the whoever your named speaker is, that you could do that. Another suggestion I would offer is we do for Constitution Day, our chief has approved, and we've done this for a number of years, is that we have a template that we prepared, and every judge for all 4 levels of our courts read that at the beginning of their docket. And I'm suggesting that during a law day, on the day of law day, maybe that's a proposal or a recommendation you could make to the chief in your area. Could we develop something that could be read publicly during that day to celebrate that? And those things that we've done historically with students, I still suggest those still can be done, but in a very limited way. And I think, Krista's idea about the artwork and using the postcards to get the information out to students is very well received. And again, this year, unfortunately, I think many jurisdictions who have done mock trials in the past are relegated to doing the mock trials remotely. So maybe even incorporating the mock trial participants, which would give you a ready-made audience. If you're trying to do sort of a town hall, you could use those students to start that and then have it rebroadcast on a local or state bar website on occasions. So those are some of the suggestions that I would have. And I would also suggest that sometimes, especially during this time, there are going to be some roadblocks, some hurdles that folks are going to have to overcome. So I just suggest that you be patient, that you do not give up about making sure that you have programming that can be reflective of your community. And hopefully that you can develop things that are can be marketed and be used outside of the one day of law day, right? That you can incorporate it throughout the year, that you could use whatever contest winners that they are promoted throughout the year, and that when we're able to gather again, that there could be some celebratory opportunity to celebrate those students and their accomplishments. And I would also, the final suggestions relate to higher education, and specifically dealing with those individual students that are in our community college family, that there is plenty of opportunity in those circumstances that the remote education is going gangbusters with the community colleges. So I do suggest that you can pair up teams to speak on the rule of law. And I dare say that we've had, that you will find that you will have success in getting, number one, the students to want to participate, and also the faculty to participate with you. So those are some of the suggestions. And as far as contact, I'm more than happy to speak to others about things we've done over the years. And of course, in this time of COVID-19, we really have to modify a lot of what we do, but it's certainly not impossible. And I think today and this year is a perfect opportunity when we speak about advancing the rule of law, to incorporate a variety of things. The separation of powers, we can incorporate the social unrest that we've experienced and have really good dialogue about how the rule of law can advance diversity and inclusion, how the rule of law promotes the well-being of each and every individual, and those that may have a minority view. So that was all that I could share, and I look forward to any questions that are in the chat, and I will fall silent. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Judge Brown. We appreciate it. And Tiffany, please correct me. I believe that's the last of our pre-planned presenters. But what I'd like to do is see if we have any questions that haven't been addressed. And if you have any questions right now, this would be a great time to include them in the chat. One of the questions that I saw a moment ago talked about Law Day planning at planning materials. And our go-to place for Law Day planning materials is lawday.org. If you go to the lawday.org website, we already have many materials there that you can use in your Law Day planning activities. And there will be more coming on board. One of the activities that we're launching this year is that we're encouraging people to have conversations and discussions about the rule of law and advancing the rule of law now. And one model, for instance, National Public Radio uses StoryCorps, a discussion between two or more individuals where they're discussing a topic. We are going to give individuals an opportunity to post their own videos wherein they talk about their discussions with respect to the rule of law. So that's one of the things that you'll be seeing. Yes, the question has come up as to whether or not we'll be including lesson plans and similar materials that have been part of Law Day celebrations in the past. And those will, in fact, be included.
Yeah. If I can,
yes, please.
If I can talk about that a moment. If you go to lawday.org now, you will see there are 2 high school level lesson plans. One deals with public health. So there are different public health incidents in recent history included in that lesson, and it's a Socratic seminar, so you can adapt it to your needs. The other lesson deals explicitly with definitions of the rule of law, recognizing that we don't all have one definition for the rule of law, and looks at some different perspectives on what the rule of law means. So those are there, and you can just print them off and use them, or you can adapt them for a virtual setting. The conversations that Will has mentioned are also there. There's a how-to page, so we've pointed to StoryCorps as a model. If you use TikTok and just want to do a 60-second riff on what you think that the rule of law means to you, that counts as a reflection or a conversation. And so however anyone wants to be creative with this, we see this as a real opportunity to engage people at individual levels in ways when we might not be able to gather so much as a group.
Tiffany, if someone has a question and it doesn't occur to them until after our session today is over, how do they get their questions answered?
You're welcome to send an email directly to us at lawday@americanbar.org. That's a public email box that several of us on our staff check, so we will answer your question quickly. Also, you can reach us through lawday.org. There should be a way to contact us there. And then, as Will said, we are going to continue to add things in the coming weeks. So we intend to have things like a Law Day Zoom background that you might be able to use for a virtual program, anything else, some social media graphics, things like that, anything else that we can think of to try to make the virtual Law Day experience a little bit easier for people to use. The artwork is also there as we've put up in the past, so you're welcome to download that and use it for whatever you can think to use it for. I don't know. At this point, we all just have to be creative with whatever we can do. And then as you're planning your events, if you think of something that would really help you, by all means, feel free to send us a message at lawday@americanbar.org, and we'll see what we can do to work with it.
Right. One question that has come up, Jeff Nall, I believe, will there be an ABA Law Day webcast with a keynote speaker that we can co-brand and encourage our members to participate in rather than planning a local speaker to present virtually? So we are planning at least 2 more Law Day nationwide events.
Mm-hmm.
One is tentatively scheduled. I use the term tentative. Is that a good date, April 29th, Tiffany?
Oh yeah, that's a real date, yeah.
All right. April 29th with the Law Librarian of Congress. We will have an event that will be focused on international issues with respect to the rule of law. And then there will also be an event not on Law Day itself, because Law Day this year, May 1st, is on a Saturday. And in order to get a larger audience, we're going to push that off by a few days, but there will be a what you might call a traditional Law Day event in early May. And that event we're anticipating will focus on contemporary issues and what it means to advance the rule of law with respect to all of those areas. And there will be a keynote speaker, and that is to be announced soon.
That's still in the works.
Indeed. So hold on for that one. The question was, will there be lesson plans made available for junior high school students? And the answer is yes. As Tiffany's already alluded to, that information is available already on lawday.org, and I believe.
Well, I did say they were high school level lesson plans, depending on the audience of the younger students. You might be able to work with them. We tried to keep them very basic, so you can definitely take a look at them and see if there are elements that you can use with a younger audience. And I think that if you can reach out to us directly at lawday@americanbar.org, then we can also work with you a little bit more as needed. So I'm hopeful that they can be manipulated to fit what you're trying to do.
Great.
So
there's a question here. How large do you recommend video call rooms be in order to be inclusive of the most number of students, but still be small enough to encourage participation and not have glitches and lags?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, like, we all have seen the Zoom calls. Like, we've all been in Zoom programs that have a few people or lots of people. If you're doing something like recording a conversation as part of the National Conversations Initiative, then that group can be as big as you're comfortable with so that people can participate. But I don't know, remote school is really a real thing for a lot of people. So I think a class size could even work. But yeah, I think the sky is the limit as far as groups and virtual meetings and Zoom can go. You really just have to be thoughtful with how you're working on that. All right, I'm looking at some other questions here. An estimate of when virtual backgrounds will be available, hopefully by next week. I'm hoping we can turn those around pretty quickly. This idea of co-branding the Law Day webcast, we hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's definitely a good one. Let me see. I thought there was another question about the idea of a mock trial, which is a fascinating one. All right, there's some people that answered the other questions on mock trial. The ABA does not have a plan at the moment to conduct a scripted mock trial as part of Law Day. But I am hopeful that that is something that can be done on a smaller scale with a dedicated audience. We do have pages with, or we do have websites with free mock trials that you could certainly use.
Right. One of the things that we want to do is to amplify your events. So you may be doing something in your area, and what we are prepared to do and what we want to do is give you a platform to use lawday.org and the programming that we have nationally in order to help get your programs out to a broader audience than ever before. And so we're very interested in doing that. So if you have a program, you're not limited. Again, Law Day, as far as we're concerned, kicks off or launches right now.
And
so let's
goes for a
let's
month.
get started. Indeed.
We are hoping to get a calendar. We are going to have some sort of calendar working at lawday.org. My dream of dreams is to have an interactive calendar where you can submit your events and you can find our events and search by where you live. But at a very basic level, we are just going to have just all of the programs that we learn about. We can certainly post and amplify. So you might even get audiences at your programs that you wouldn't otherwise have, which we think could be a win for everyone.
Right. One question that came in is, kids seem to like the online trivia game of Cahoots. Would it be possible to have a prepared set of questions to use?
Maybe.
Absolutely.
I hadn't thought of that. So that's a good one to think about.
Right. And if you'd like to volunteer your services, if you have programming in the box that you'd like to share, please, by all means, contact us through lawday.org, and we'll be happy to work with you to see if we can get your ideas out, again, to a broader audience.
And then we did have, I think, maybe one or two more questions that we can work through. Someone asks where we can learn more about the April 29th and early May national events. We will post those at lawday.org. They're not posted at the moment, but they can be up tomorrow as soon as we can get them up. Right now, the page reflects today's event, so we'll take that down and put the coming events up.
Right.
So.
And Tiffany, earlier someone asked, the event today, is that going to be available via tape for people?
Yeah. We've recorded the event today, so that'll be available both at lawday.org, and it can also live at our YouTube page. So if you're on YouTube and you follow the ABA Division for Public Education, we also house all of our videos there too.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of our time together here today. We want to thank everyone for participating. And again, more to follow. This is the launch of Law Day. Just have a parting thought. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King is the following: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." As a nation, we're certainly facing times of challenge and controversy. Their calls for racial justice, doubts about elections, cries about restrictions brought on by a global pandemic, and all types of debates and conversations with respect to how these various challenges comport with the rule of law. That is what this conversation is all about. How do we proceed? How do we stand firm? And how does the United States of America be the nation that we say we are? Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your participation. That concludes our event.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. That went very well. I look forward, and I really just can't thank you enough for your